Welcome to Earth Impulse.
It's really lovely when we all get together, even though it's been a really hard week for many of us for many different reasons, from the personal into what's been happening out there, which we can loosely say our community and the alternative media or truth movement. So it's been hard. It's been a hard one. And a lot of things have happened. We might touch on that a little bit today. So again, Christine, Claudia of Earth Empaths, we have Niels Kunze, we have Lily Earthling Kolosova, and Randy Moggins of Off Planet Radio. The person that's not with us today is Shane, and he couldn't be here because he had to work. So let's just jump in, folks. I mean, we started talking about the topic of disclosing disclosure last week, and we all felt after we stopped recording that we had a lot more to share on that. So we're kind of started looking down into the tunnel of the marketing of the new age, or what could be also subtitled "Gaming Humanity." And it pretty takes us into deep territory, because it's not just our opinions. It's like looking into something that is this virtual reality or fantasy world that most of us, or most folks, are still very immersed in. And we touched on that, the cosmic disclosure of Corey Good and David Wilcock. I keep looking out there at others also, and I'm not pointing them out as like, these are the guys and these are the bad guys. It's not that at all. It's they're teaching us something also. But I'm seeing a very, very fantastical reality right now. And subsequently, I'm also been thinking about how the real virtual world that we know has been our world for thousands of years is literally collapsing. It's collapsing around us. So it's going to look more and more like a fantasy. And it is more difficult for us as humans to really navigate through it, because we are in a much finer mesh field of how this reality is actually created. So with that being said, I'm really not sure where we want to go today. We were talking before we started recording about the Babylonian black magic money system and how it is consuming also the truth movement. How many folks out there, because they've been uncomfortable for many years, because they've been poor for many years, because they've been the ones that have taken on a big brunt of it. Did they just fold up their tent and get tired and say, let's start marketing our stuff? Let's take the goodies with it too. We put in our time. I don't know. But I'm seeing that. I'm seeing some of the finest voices that were once speaking the deepest truths are now talking about an industry. They're now talking about marketing, and they're putting out some pretty strange stuff, in my opinion.
This kind of goes into our last show, which was the media takeover that's going on in the alternative communities. They are communities in a loose sense, because I think there's a unity of purpose behind all of this that initially drove it. And what has happened is we have gotten to the place now where money is an issue, largely because of the global economic system, which is basically in free fall right now. The global system itself is the litmus test for what's going to happen in the alternative communities as it implodes. I said a couple of weeks ago, I don't know what's holding this ball of wax together right now. I mean, I looked at Deutsche Bank. 6 months ago, I said Deutsche Bank should have imploded by now. They are so top heavy with derivatives that they can't sustain themselves. The U.S. debt load, the U.S. has now once again filed bankruptcy. It is a bankrupt corporate shell structure. Our entire monetary system is nothing but a gigantic usurious slave system that we've all been pulled into, and the biggest spell that it weaves is psychologically and spiritually. Mm-hmm. So, Christine, when we were talking about the selling of the New Age, and I said to you, this is really kind of an old paradigm. If you go back and you study what happened in the 1960s even, where you began to see movements solidify. Mm-hmm. When you reference transcendental meditation, which came into being in the 60s, it started out with the Maharishi, the Beatles, Mia Farrow, the Beach Boys. They all went to India. They met with the Maharishi. I can say this, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. They went there. They did the whole communal thing, and they all walked away disillusioned by what they saw. It was kind of an empty vessel, but it was a marketing vessel that then launched something called TM, mm-hmm. Trademark, which came to the United States and began to market actively transcendental meditation. You had numerous movements, SLN out in California, S, which was Earhart Seminars, Werner Earhart. And we've just gone down the line through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and forward with continuous marketing programs promising enlightenment, new consciousness, an evolved society as part of a paradigm. And then we come to find out that the UN is supporting a lot of this through different programs, and the CIA is running backdrop operations into most, if not many, if not most of these operations as well. So we have to take the paradigm and look at it again and realize that the so-called alternative media networks are probably running under similar models with similar operations going on. And then we have to look at ourselves first and make sure that we're clean, because if we're going to sit here and talk about this, and I've gone through this numerous times, where I've had to look at associations, where I've looked at things that I'm doing and wanted to make sure that this stayed as tight and clean as possible and free of influence by any outside sources. And I got to tell you, that's a real challenge now. Yes. So we're kind of down the road in terms of the economy itself. We're at a terminal point with the economies. The world economies cannot continue. Whatever, quote, they decide to do with this, they're going to have to find some structure now to bring in as a substitute, in my opinion. In doing that, they're going to drag all of us along at the very time when we should be separating, we should be innovating, we should be looking at ways to form communities and to create currencies of exchange between ourselves that don't involve using toxic derivative debt-based dollars and other currencies that are being controlled by globalists. That's my opening salvo.
Well, no, that's great. That's great, because it puts it right where it needs to be in each of our own reality. And that's the problem. And that's what we were talking about, Randy, is that it's, you just, how does one do that? And what you're saying, I think we've talked about in other videos, is looking at patterns. Once you see a pattern, then you can see it repeating itself. And then you get an array of all the glitter and the glamour and the personalities and the celebrityhood, right? And you start to see the pattern. And I see that so clearly, and Lily spoke, we've all spoken about it, how that is rolling out through this. I just calling it the truth movement, to separate it out from alternative. Those that are looking for the truth, right? Those that claim they are looking for the truth. And what is that truth? So we do have, and then I'll just make my last statement here, we have within us, and this is a very primary in me, the ability as co-creators within this intelligent universal field to create out of nothing. We really don't need a currency system, right? So we're still systematically thinking, though. We're still trying to fit and plop ourselves in or plug ourselves into some system. And for me, it's like stepping out further and further out of the system so that something new, unexpected, magical can inform us. So that's, those are the concurrent conversations we're having. We're looking at what's happening on one hand and, listening deep enough to see how something else can develop here.
I think, Christine, you just hit on a really, really important key here, is that we are watching, and we had watched, all of us had watched this truth movement become what Randy said last time, become the mainstream. And I mean, how can you hide the fact that it's not mainstream anymore? I mean, just take Gaiam TV. It's a mainstream, it's the same system. So if we gonna to put out a question and say, hey, does the truth movement that we have right now, is it co-opted or not? Is it still a truth movement? And you just look at Gaiam TV and who's connected to it and all of that stuff. And you gonna, as a human being, when somebody's gonna ask you, like some people are asking me, do you think, that they're co-opted by the system? It's like, yeah, if you still have that question in your head, then you've got a lot of work to do. Because this is the thing, the only way they can bring the system, same system, in and hang on to control is by pretending to bringing something new in, which is exactly the same. And so they play on words, and this is all mental games. And that's why I was saying that it was so important for us personally to come out of that, our own personal system, so we can see it for what it is. And what is happening right now, and I've said this the last time or the previous time we had this talk with you guys, what I've seen is that there is a dead end to their programming, and it is very obvious right now. So it expresses in this contradiction, and it's almost like they're impossible. It's impossible for them to hide right now. It's impossible, because what is happening, and I was talking about, we have to, the key thing with that, we have to see it, that all religions, including New Age, they're all the same. They're all the same, energetically speaking. And so I was talking about that we have to pay attention, because death is a very important point, a selling point for religion. So they use death to sell religion, to sell enslavement. We just seen this last week. And now we're seeing all the hyenas came out of the woods, having a piece to spin so they can benefit from death. Because religion only plays in that field of death. It only can buy and sell truth through that, because that's where it ends, because it's dead. So right now, let's say we just had a death that happened in our community. Now, in this last week, I've been watching all this hungry hyenas trying to spin it. They can, and if you look into alternative media right now, and who is talking about what, about that death, we will know who's working with what field. Every one of those people so far that came out about trying to make sense of what just happened. I personally haven't seen one individual came out without trying to own a piece of that death. They all want to own a piece of it. The disgusting hyenas want to own a piece of it because that was their reward. You know, how many people are right now spinning it? Look at the reasons why they're spinning that death. We have the ability and capability right now to see through all of their bullshit. We have. And I know people do. It's the fact that a lot of us still hasn't processed that fear, because this death happened through fear. And so it triggered a lot of fear in us. It triggered a fear of death in me. And so that was for me something that I needed to work through. So that's what I'm going to work through. And because I'm not interested in selling or buying truth, so how I perceive that, it's for me to learn the lesson from this. So I'm going to be learning the lesson here on my own. And so we're all going to learn what it means to us. But for New Age, because to me, this is the thing, you guys. I don't know, but I've said this to somebody in 2011. I'm not here to install a program, New Age or anything. I was always in New Age because I knew that I need to reveal it. That was my purpose, is to see the truth in New Age. And I did. And I'm still seeing it. And there is more and more and more and more of us that's going to see it. Right now, looking at Facebook and looking at the people in truth movement that we're all connected to in some way, look at what they're doing with this death. Look how obvious they are. Money is not just the currency of this death. There's so much more energy that is being sold and bought right now in alternative communities. They're buying and selling soul energy of that human being. But I'm here to tell them, all they're selling and buying is their own energy that they put into it. So if they sell out, they sell their own soul, because they and none of them had that soul. They know they didn't fucking harvest it. They know it. They know it. So the reason why they're selling his death so fucking cheap is because they didn't get what they wanted. They didn't get what they wanted. And for us, all of those that we know that we can feel that soul, we all can feel it. We know where it is. We know it hasn't been harvested. We all know that. It's just the idiots that don't know it, because they were told from higher levels that it all gonna work if they do their job. And right now, they're looking, a lot of those people in alternative media right now, they're running with their program or buying and selling human death, because this is a New Age religion. It is based on the fear of death. And that's why they make money off of it. Because all New Age promised them is that somehow they can buy or sell their soul into good or bad situation after death. This is all it is. This is all it is. Your soul is the real currency, because it's a creative soul. It can create. And so what is happening right now is so obvious that I don't know how these hyenas are gonna go then, oh, we didn't know that we were trying to sell and buy somebody else's soul. You can't say that. And I think, I've posted that video of mine from last year again, and I've said it in there that this year, 2016, in New Age communities, this is going to be the year of transformation. That means that transparency has to hit first. And if anything, what had happened in this last week with this death, it made them all fucking naked now. They're all naked. All those that were around there feeding on the soul energy, because all of those hyenas been feeding on the soul energy of that human being. And so in here, people think that maybe that death was something that was done by that system. I'm telling you, they have no fucking power over a human soul. They want you to think that they do, because they want you to give your human soul power to that agenda of trying to buy and sell death and make money off of human death. This is what they are. This is the dirty secrets that they hold, because they feed on death, because it is death. They're possessed by death, dead-like consciousness, so they need death to survive. Because you know what, right now, some of those people in alternative communities that ran this very heavy programs, they have nothing. They're empty-handed. They've been thrown to the curb by the system because they didn't do good enough. So what is happening right now? They're feeding on the death because they have no life in them. So they have to feed on this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, it is so obvious. And then for them to turn around and say that we are telling lies about them, you are the one who is feeding on a human soul by doing all of that stuff. Look at all the different spin cycles that went in just a period of 1 week. Look who's blaming who. Look who wants to play what kind of victim and victimizer game. Because this is the only field, like I said, this is the only field they can play in. The dead light, the parasite cannot play in the living field. It cannot, like here we are, we know we're a living field. So for us, this death, we'll look at it from this perspective. What does it mean for us as a living collective field? For them, all it is a 15 minutes of fame that they can use for their advantage. This is what Miles does right now, is using it to gain people to look at him, and so to stay relevant. Like I was saying, these people want to stay relevant through death. So what field are they playing in? Are they playing in living field? Well, I hate to go biblical here, but sometimes that's the only way to go biblical, that they can get it through their thick heads that we are seeing you by your own fruits. We're not sitting here and I'm not sitting here and saying something that I think it's true about you. I'm sitting here watching you, your big mouth over there in alternative media, buying and selling human soul energy. It's like, it's so visible, you guys. It's so visible. But for us, we have to stay strong. We have to stay strong because like I said, when they are starting to recognize that they're visible, they go nuts. They go nuts on you. It's just the program. It's just gonna go nuts, and they go. Ah.
Can I jump in for a second, Lily? Because it's so in your face hearing you speak this way, right? And it is about death. And I didn't really hear you until this morning when you kept saying this is death energy. And you can call it satanistic, you can call it the feeding on human souls is death energy. And yet at the same time, everybody's playing a role. Everybody's playing a part. We're looking at a collective picture of pieces. So there are those also that are making it very obvious. So it's in a way they're playing their part so that we don't get into this separation. This is the one thing that I'm very careful myself to try to discern through is like not to get into playing you are and me here, dark and negative, black and white. It's like it's all this moving, revolving screen. So it's like we're looking at a screen reality in 3D, 360 degrees. So there's going to be those that are playing this part while we're speaking it from here. And so it's not really about putting anyone down per se, but it's like trying to wake them up to the part that they're playing. But they are the ones that are making, it's just like the Hillarys and the Trumps. If you have your eyes even slightly slit open right now, you can see that this is a circus playing out on this Shakespearean stage that is our world. And it is blatantly obvious. It is so obvious. That's why I'm speaking, why I'm speaking partly is because it's become so obvious that how much more does one have to point out?
Exactly.
How does one have to point out that when you listen to radio show hosts within the truth and the ufology movement say, how are you going to market your new website? And somebody answers, well, the industry is indicating this. I mean, these are the patterns of the speech patterns that are coming up again and again and again. And yet we have, this moment with a friend. This is a friend that passed. This is a spiritual soul friend that passed, whether you knew him or not. What, Claudia, I mean, how deep and distasteful was the fund showing his son? I mean, these are things that people aren't looking at. I don't know who our audience is. I don't know who's going to hear our words today. I don't know that, but I'm watching and I'm saying there is such a mass of people right now. They're verging on this reality of, am I awake? Am I aware? Am I awake and aware? And yet they're still programmed into the savior memes. They're still waiting for the ET races to come.
Yeah, that whole awake and aware thing, isn't that just another marketing line now?
Yes.
I mean, and I'm not trying, your comment about what Lily just said, which was, boy, that was a major unpacking of a lot of concepts. We do wind up in polarity as a result of this. There's no way around that. There is an us and a them. I know that a lot of us, this is an existential kind of thing that we're going through, even within this group. Some of us have torn ourselves apart over this because we sense that everything that we're trying to do right now seems in vain when you look at what happened with the death of Max Spiers and how it was telegraphed out onto the internet, how it was parsed and dissected, how despite all of the words and posts and the radio shows back and forth, nobody knows a damn thing about any of this. There are no facts to operate off of. So what are we doing? We're just blowing hot air out there. For what purpose? To keep yourself at the forefront, to be cutting edge, to make sure that you have your stake laid out so that when the time comes, you can unpack some more data that people will go running to. Why? Because there's another conference, there's another video, there's something else out there, there's another event, because we always have to have events. We want to go do these clusterfuck conferences where everybody gets together and gets harvested together, because let's face it, I've been to enough conferences. I know the spooks that hang in the background, and I feel the energy drain that goes on, and I see all the people schmoozing and interacting with each other, and that's all it is. It's a clusterfuck. I don't have an interest in it anymore. I don't go there.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, there's a profit incentive. There's a marketing aspect. Book authors sell books. You know, they sell DVDs. I got to say this. We need to get information out. It requires an infrastructure. It requires a modest investment of energy and something that denominates out to a currency. How we do that is in flux right now. And it's probably, I think, as we talked about before we even went on the air, how do we navigate this? Well, you know, we haven't tapped into what Christine just pointed out in her opening. We're creators. Why do we need to go to a system and ask them for their toxic derivative money in order to operate in a field to put out information? Why do we need to rely on their system to expose them, which is obviously some ways so laughably ridiculous? I mean, I even laugh at myself sometimes. I'm going, wow, you feel really subversive today. You're kind of dangerous. You're kind of edgy. And yet at the same time, you're going, you know something? They could pull the plug on me and it all goes away in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
So the real currency isn't the artifact of the units we put out there, which is like this video, the shows that we do individually, all the things that we're doing in so-called media. It is the energetic wave that goes out as a result of the communication that will sit on the edge of consciousness and begin to penetrate into it. If we remove our egos from it, if we're able to separate the messenger from the message, we'll be far more successful in initiating what it is we want to do and inserting ourselves into it as these personalities, talk show hosts, whatever. And I mean, I fall into it. I mean, in 2009, I put up a website, offplanetradio.com. I had no shows. I just started. You know, you just start somewhere. And over the years, I've watched as it evolved and developed, and it's kind of become an entity unto itself. It's kind of like, oh, there's Off Planet Radio, you know? And there's me, and I'm supposedly the guy that's the host and all of that. But that's a separate entity. In fact, that's even a separate me than the me that's sitting here in this room in flesh right now. I actually developed, and I was just talking to Emily Moyer, who is my co-host and producer, and I said, you know, I listen sometimes to my stuff. It's painful because I hear how my voice takes on the cadence. I hear how we kind of get modulated into this communication stream where all of a sudden we take on a persona, we become something, and that something is an artifice of what we actually are. And so the separation that we are seeing right now in the alternative media, which is not new, is really us, looking at you, looking at them and going, but, you know, this is just more the separation. And if we can stand back and reflect on that, if we can look at it from that perspective, if we can, as we closed out the last video we did on disclosure, and Shane said it, when he said, hey, talk to me. David Wilcox,
exactly.
Talk to me. Corey Good, talk to me. Alfred Weber, talk to me. Kerry Cassidy, all of the media figures out there. There's a separation because why? Because most of these media figures think they are breathing the rarefied air of the gods and doing what they're doing rather than understanding that we had at one time a common purpose. The common purpose was, yes, in the beginning to disclose all this stuff, but now have we disclosed enough yet, or do we have to keep going? You know, that's one of the things that I keep looking at. It's kind of like, what's left to disclose at this point? How far do we slice and dice all this?
Right. Well, this is where, you know, the term that comes to me, Randy, is looking at, you know, and in some ways all of us are on the mystical path. That means the inner gnosis path, the inner truth versus the outer truth, which is so different point of view. And it's like turning your worldview inside out. We've said that before. And yet the term that's come to me is the meta-mystical. That's the collaborative. This is the first time that I think we as humanity have had this medium, okay, of being able to connect what you said so beautifully, it just blew my mind, is that yes, we're putting this out into a field. This is our consciousness speaking into this field, and it is changing it as we speak. There is no absolute right now. We are in the flux and the flow of life and creation, and it's not an easy place to be. There's not a stability here. There's not a security here. There's nothing promised here. There's no agenda here. And so it becomes a very difficult place. How do we, humanity, as individuated aspects of the one self, really reach in and start creating something new without getting so locked into the polarities that we're at each other's throats, that we are now, and that for me is my fine line. How do I express my truth, which can be brutal and ruthless sometimes, because it has to be with me first. When I wrote what I wrote about Max, I had to do an inner battle. Do I put my voice out there? Because I'm risking looking like I'm getting my piece of the pie. I was so aware of that. I'm risking, like, am I have to question, am I trying to jump into the front edge of this, being seen to be on the cutting edge? Am I taking from the soul? But those are inner questions that only I can answer for myself. And with Claudia, who I don't know, we've seemed to have lost her on this call. So Claudia, what do I do with this? This came through me. What do I do with it? Do I put it out? She said, put it out, because it's another voice. Because what are we really talking about is that I have an aspect that touches with another soul. My soul with that soul. Your soul, Randy, yours, Lily. I know you went through a hell.
Claudia's coming back on that.
Yeah.
Her internet connection.
Yeah. Right. And what you just said, and Claudia, I mean, just like so beautifully today in our Earth Empaths chat, was quoted when I woke up this morning, exactly what you said, Randy, that really we are creating a field of intelligence by sharing. If we can touch down at that soul level, that living light soul, and that's the one when I speak the name Max Spiers, which is, again, that's an identity that was put out there on a screen for all of us. But the soul energy, which is part of me and all of us, is the one that's the most interesting. If we can get out of the most teaching, the most instructive, the most informative, what that brought to each of us individually. So, yeah, go ahead. I get into a kind of an emotional state about this because it hasn't cleared. To even be speaking about somebody who so recently passed, that all that upturning, spinning, and digging, there's not the real clarity there, so it's very difficult to really speak about it from my point of view right now.
I understand that, Christine, because there is, and this is why I wanted to show first all that cartoonish part of it, but then underneath that, what I said, it's a very big layer that we are, and that's more of, if you're on the path within, then what we process, in the way we process the death of a human being, is that we understand that we're connected all on that soul level that is a human soul. And so when things like that about Max came through the living field of you, first of all, you had to put that out into that field in alternative community to let everybody know that that is a living soul, a human being that is within the human collective soul on this planet. And so that's where it resides, that we can have access to that soul because it is part of us.
Thank you, Lily.
And this, what I said, I mean, I haven't even begun to say 5 words yet, what the living field of this soul that just passed on into a different frequency of collective field, what is that going to do to a human soul? And it's going to be up to us individually, how we learn from this and what we do with it. But I can tell you in just 1 week that I am already seeing how this human soul is already working on a collective consciousness, because there's so much more that is opening up within me right now by connecting to this energy and saying, okay, what can I, as a human soul, just like you are, you passed on, what do I do with this as a living field? And there's so much that is coming up, that all of this stuff that I talked about, what hyenas are doing right now, again, it feels so puny to what the real reasons and what this soul will do for collective humanity. It's already doing it. And so the thing is, the thing that they're buying and selling, this energy, they're only buying and selling a copy of it. They have no access to the real living field. Not a gram, not anything. And so there is nothing original. You know, when they cannot harvest a human soul,
Exactly.
they can pretend that they harvested, but the way then they sell and buy that energy, it hits dead end really fast. So you watch, all the hyenas will hit a dead end. I don't know. I mean, we're talking about days here. That's how much energy they got. They've got absolutely nothing. The rest of it, it's gonna empower us here to stand even stronger, because that soul had strength, human strength. It's something they could never take away. Never. And we know that all it's gonna do for us is gonna trigger our strength. I feel a lot more stronger right now. I feel a lot more stronger because, like I said to Christine, if that's what it's triggering within me, a fear of death, imagine if I push that through.
Exactly, Lily.
Then how are you going to scare me then?
I think all they have is their death cult. And it is nothing more than that, because everything in this so-called system is anti-life. You know, it starts with your birth certificate. You're turned into a fiction, which is two-dimensional with absolute no life. And then they market the deaths of, every celebrity. And it has to collapse because there's no life behind it.
I just want to add my voice to yours, Lily, because I was pulled into a session last night with someone, and this is my inner knowing. Okay, I know. Yeah, how do you ever say that? That actually, that soul did go free. It did not get harvested, and that for me is the underlying fundamental reason. What if we focus on that? Is where this is going to take us. And since that soul passed, I have been going through my own inner process. Memories have been flooding back in They've been coming from Mars, which I have never looked at. Why did I never look at Mars? Oh my God, why did I never look at it? I never looked at it. And all of a sudden I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing in the deeper planes of the astral where there's so much information, and it's like something went through. And if we can use that energy, all right, that, they didn't get that soul. All right. They even, doesn't matter what happened out there. It doesn't matter what the circumstances were. They did not get that soul. And that soul is primary to all of us. So this is where, when you said that, I was like, wow, I didn't even dare say that. But I want to add that to that. It was so apparent to me.
You're very interested because the genetic memory.
Yes.
I just told you guys the floodgates has freaking opened.
Okay, exactly.
So there is a genetic code, and there was a nod that I feel that it's now unraveling.
Yep.
So,
exactly.
Whoa.
So here we are independently tapping into an intelligence and a living light force field. And we're getting the same sort of information. This isn't something that we've priorly shared. We've said a few things on a chat. But all of our chats right now are talking about our genetic memory, that opening up of it and the expansion of it. So we're not looking out there and seeing these ET force fields that are going to come in and in galactic ships and all of that. It all informs us. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not discarding all of that. There's something else happening here. Very, very profound. Randy, you were going to say something?
No, I was listening to Lily and you going back and forth. I don't know if anybody here has ever read Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land, but I'll recommend the book for listeners and viewers out there to go look at what happens when you form a cult around someone. And then that death of that figure, I mean, you see it, it's the dominant.
I don't know. Randy froze?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's frozen.
Yeah, and I just got a thing, my internet connection's unstable. So I think let's let
is this fear.
Randy, you're freezing. Let's stop for a second and just see. Okay, if you want to repeat that, Randy, you froze like halfway into your first sentence.
Okay, I don't know how much of it you heard.
What
I was pointing to was just this whole death cult aspect and how it didn't work this time. There is a component to the death cult that wants to use it to continue commerce, to continue business as usual. That's not what happened this time. What happened this time was, Lily called it this genetic memory. It was an interconnective process that began to weave into it. And we talked about this in the pre-conversation today. We watched it all go live. This was kind of a unique event in that we were all connected. I mean, we were having conversations. We knew this. We were aware of what was happening here. And we were also psychically aware of it. I think the people who were connected to it were psychically and genetically connected to it in a way that we didn't really understand. Mm-hmm. Even though we may not have had a frontline first-person connection with this, because of the way the field itself connects, like nodes on the internet, like one node connects here, but we all sort of had the sense that something happened. The soul didn't get harvested. Some people began to get downloads like you did, Christine. Many other people, I think, had a perspective that needed to be put out, while other people like myself needed to take counsel of silence and go, I can't put this out right now. Mm-hmm. The fact that some people got informational downloads and other people let's just say, got rather beat up in the astral as a result of poking around into this thing, indicates the dark forces that were at play here, who were not getting their way, who were unhappy about the inquiry into the matter, who know now that this is not going to be used for commercial purposes. This is being used for a higher purpose because the spirit itself is still operating out there at a level now that's heightened. And again, I'll go back to Stranger in a Strange Land. The dominant message in the book was always what Valentine Michael Smith said from the very beginning before they formed a cult around him. Thou art God. If you simply stayed with that message, there would have never been a cult. And Valentine Michael Smith would have not needed to, let's just say, sacrifice his life at the end to be a martyr to bring a message forward. We don't need martyrs, but we can symbolically look at a death and realize that it has an impact on us and it has an effect on the information field. Somewhere in that there was something I was trying to get to before this all froze.
Well,
Yeah, this very deep for me is very deep. It's gone to a lot of original trauma and all the repeats of it afterwards. So this had opened up huge, deep field for me. I'm still, it's like there was so much opened up that it even opened up in my dad that I mean, I couldn't believe it. How his programming just dropped.
see, that's
I was shocked. This is like once I consciously figure out how this opens up and what it opens up, and eventually what I feel that where if we stay anchored in this living field, what we can expand and how far we can expand, to me it feels so huge. But we have to, and I see already as some people are starting to poke into that, but the mimickers will poke into that, and they will poke into his field that they'll still do that. They'll talk about what he said and what he meant and all of that stuff, because they can only look back and have a record of dead energy, because it's already dead. His words are dead now, so, but they're going to be digging through that dead level of, buying and selling death, for a while. But what we can do is, like you, Christine, you're saying, right underneath that, there is a living field of that soul. And because we're saying here that it was not harvested, so as you go into the living field of your own soul and you anchor in that, that's where you're gonna find the living field information that would never dies, that his soul has, because there's a record, there's everything, that 97% of junk DNA, that's his soul. That it's there. We have access to it through our own living field. So imagine what we can do with that. Imagine what we can open with that. We don't even have words yet to understand how important it is to connect to the living field of that soul.
Niels, do you want to jump in here? I mean, you're listening very intently, and I know you probably have some things to add.
I'll jump in. Being a word guy, one thing that I noticed was that the words dead, death, and debt are almost the same word. And it points to the living, well, as opposed to the living system that we should be tied into. We're tied into a debt system. And since our money is all debt, basically we trade only in debt, it is exactly that we're trading in death. And the entire system that we call the economy is a dead system. It only trades in dead things. We are social creatures by nature. We want to gather together. We want to belong to something. We've been so deeply conditioned to belong to this death system. And there is an alternative, and even slightly alternative to what Lily's talking about, connecting to the living soul energy, connecting to the living world energy. Anyone who has, poked around on my blog to any degree will have noticed that for a few years I was writing something called the Daily Forest Report. And that was kind of a 2-year project where I'm still going out in the forest every day, but then it was the first time that I took it really, really seriously, that I wanted to be part of the forest life. I wanted to be part of the natural world. I wanted to be on par with every animal that I was encountering in the forest. I wanted to be foraging the food alongside all of the other animals, feeding on the same things, living just completely immersed in the same energy as them. And I'm still intending to write a summary report of the entire 2-year experience, because there's some really important things that was difficult to emphasize as I was going through the experience. But now I've had a year to look back on it and see exactly what occurred. And I think when we think about connecting to nature, going back to nature, there's a lot of resistance, because people think, well, we can't be 7 billion hunter-gatherers again. It couldn't work. But I would say we don't know that, because it's a living system and it responds to us when we immerse ourselves in it. And for me, it was incredibly profound as an individual to go out there, and every time I tasted a berry and the berry tasted really, really good, I would tell that bush, that's what I like. I really, really like that. And lo and behold, next year, that bush would produce berries that tasted all like that one berry. And there'd be so many more of them. And that happened so many times with so many things that I responded to that living field, to that living world, and it responded back to me and said, oh, you like that? Well, then here's a whole lot more of that. And so now it's 3 years later, and I'm just blown away by everything out there has completely responded to me. I'm going to take the claim that I did it, but no, it responded to me. And there's so much incredible food and the experiences of just tasting all the different flavors every day that I can't wait to do it. And you can't just calculate something like that with dead numbers that we get from the dead economy and say, well, Niels, that'll never work. Until we actually live it, until we actually have a relationship with that living world, with that living field, and test what it can do, how far it can respond to us, then we'll know that that living field can and will support everything that we can imagine or dream. And that's what my 3-year experience taught me. And I'm convinced, and I am kind of a numbers kind of brass tacks guy. Like, let's look at this. Is it realistic? But in my own experience, just from interacting with that world on the deepest level that I possibly could, the answer is yes. There is an alternative to that death system, and the living world, it's really just waiting for us to test what it can actually do when we're in sync with it.
Let me just jump in here for a minute with Niels, because you hit on something. It had to do with gratitude. It had to do with an energetic attribution to the creative force within the earth itself. And that giving of thanks, and it's maybe is one way we kind of look at what has gone on with the passing of a human soul from this realm, is the attribution of gratefulness, which then sows an energetic back into it, an investment of energy. You know, we've lost that. The industrial world that we lived in the technological world we live in now, has created all these separations between us and the originator of the energetic, the berry. We don't thank the berry bush because we never see it. It's a plastic box in a supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty hard to do that, isn't it? You know, now we have a soul that passed over, and the attribution is gratitude for what was imparted and the hope for continued renewal in the field itself by that being, by that entity, which is there. I mean, we feel it. And I felt this before with people who have departed, whether it was my mother or a friend that I lost a few years ago. But the element of gratitude, acknowledgement, and sowing back into the field the things that we've received from them, and then reinvesting that back out as a multiplier, which is what I think Niels was talking about in terms of the natural process of removing all the meteor. This will tie some things together. Removing the mediators, the middle people, the profiteers, the capitalists, the people who use death as a means of merchandising rather than acknowledging the life from which it springs. And that's what we have to look at. We have to go back to original sources of things, whether it is information that's being given or the nourishment that's coming from the earth. We somehow have to reconnect with that. And I do agree, we've never tried this before. Does a hunter-gatherer economy work on a planet of 7 to 9 billion people? We don't know that, but what I do know is that each one of us are specialized in some way. We have gifts, we have abilities. Niels might be able to harvest the berries. I may be able to produce the cream that goes with the berries or bake the bread that's consumed with them. When we begin to interchange and acknowledge, and we create private currencies of exchange between ourselves rather than central banking, we will get to a place where we have an authentic economic system that's not based on an artifice anymore.
With no borders, with no countries, no trade agreements and all of that. And I just thank you so much, Niels, because this is the other side of what we're in.
Awesome.
I'm just started gardening. Like, I'm following my own inner spiritual guidance. I'm not reading somebody else's book. I'm not looking at some manual out there that says this is what we should do. I know this is what we can do. So in a very small space, took up some cement pavers, put down a little garden. In 2 days, had something that when I look at it, I go, this actually can produce enough to keep a few people alive. It's a few feet wide by a few feet long, right? And this is something that, because the nature of this realm is giving, expansive, abundant. I mean, Niels, your story of the berries is so beautiful. And when you give back to it, so I'm out there every morning and I'm doing orgonite too. And I'm realizing I'm sitting there placing orgonite, and it's actually, I can see the energy. I can see the interaction of the plant with the orgonite, with the gratitude, with the love. And I'm thinking, why didn't I see this before? You know, why didn't I see it? But because it's when you become involved and immersed in it in a very personal, small way, that you start to really understand that. And when we get there, we've talked about sun gazing before too. When we start to put our feet barefoot on the earth and we look up at the sky and we gaze at the sun and we pierce our vision into the celestial realms again, we start clearing out the frickin' chemtrails. Right? We are able to do all of these things. So to be focused on death and debt and fear That's what the other polarity wants to keep pulling us back into. So here we are, we're going from, this beautiful, abundant, joy field. Where are we going to put ourselves? And it doesn't mean that we don't see the other dark, because there are the other really dark. There are the hyenas, there are the parasites, there are the archons. They're all in this realm with us too. If we can really fully step into our own co-creatorship, and I do see it changing, just like the berry plant giving. I just love that. It's so simple, Niels. So it's such an illustration of really where we're living and inhabiting.
Well, I think nature, even today, we can see that it's just a giant abundance machine. That's what nature does. It produces all the time. It's what it wants to do. It's what it's going to continue doing. And I think if it's hungry for anything, it's hungry for our direction. It wants to communicate with us. It wants to partner with us and say, what kind of a world do we actually want? And that's the way I've come to regard nature, that it's just waiting for us there to give it some direction and say, hey, this is what we'd like to try. We want to go down this road, because it is the abundance machine. Nature does it effortlessly. I go out there every day and I'm just stunned, because you look at everything that's available and then you think, well, and who's taking care of this? Nobody at all. There's nobody gardening. There's nobody fertilizing. There's nobody weeding. There's nobody putting in any effort whatsoever. It's all being done. Mm-hmm. And even if I'm not there, it's still being done, but not to the same extent. So I'd really like us to look into that option of really deeply connecting. And I want to point out that there is a big difference, and I myself, it was difficult to learn it in my life. When I've always been out in nature a lot, but for years and years and years, I was a tourist in nature. I wasn't actually connected to it. And there is a difference. Even if you spend huge amounts of time in nature, there's a difference between just being a tourist or a visitor and being part of that living field, that living tapestry. That it does take a little bit more than just going hiking and fishing on the weekends. There's a little bit more to it than that. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I can also add to that. Yeah, it's a lot more than that with me, with nature too. The way I look at it, it's our mother. It's a nurturer of our soul, because this is what we supposed to mature here. Is our soul supposed to grow and mature into a creative soul? And so she nurtures us on every level, physical and energetic as well. And so when you find that connection, that's when you look at it, as I put it in the past, as you, Neil, said, it's you become the participant with that energy. So it's not that you are just there as a separate being. Mm-hmm. Coming to the field of nature, when I go on to some of the spots that I absolutely love, is because I just go as part of that field that's there. I'm not going in there to take it from it. I'm just there to participate with it, because I know it's the living field. I just feel the life in it. And so when I need to stabilize in that living field, I can just go somewhere where I know that that's where that field is. So it's not like and it's communion. It's like, being in interaction with that energy. It doesn't mean that I'm taking something from it, or that I have to give something up from my own energy by being in nature, that I cannot be myself, with nature or something like that. It's just energetically, when we understand that we are, energy doesn't, like here we talked about death, energy doesn't disappear. It just transforms, changes form. And this living field it expresses on the planet in all these different forms, us included. This living field is expresses through us, and then expresses through that tree outside. It's all one living field that is this planetary consciousness that's we are all part of. That's the way I look at a relationship with nature, be it, and we as human beings, we're just the same way. And so this is the field I talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm. The simple way I've formed it for myself is that I inform the universe, and the universe informs me. So that's that aspect of flow, which is always present, except for most of the time we still get very distracted and aren't aware of that. And that's why that timeless moment, that's another thing we were talking about, Randy, earlier, and maybe we'll leave that again for another conversation, is like these overlapping time. And you've talked about it. I guess we've all shared it in some way, where the real universal time is now, where everything is always present. And that's, too, Niels, what I feel like it takes to be in communion with nature. You're not just a passerby. You're aware. You are awake within that. And you are, at times I actually can see my energy field, how it's moving in the energy field with it. Not like it's out there. It's like as I am moving or speaking or emoting or viewing, I can see the responses energetically without the words. Forget the words. The words are so much in the way most of the time. And yet, this is an aspect of ourselves that I think is really coming more full forward right now. And so if you're informing the universal flow and it's informing you, the observer, the being, what is it informing you of? Right? This is this interchange, right? Is it the abundance? Is it death? Is it fear? We really do get that feedback to us all the time. And when, like you said, Lily, you get to the place where you're in fear, right? I have a fear of death, right? Well, you realize that you have a fear of death. And so that's an information, and it's up to you or whoever. How are you going to process that? And what is it going to bring up from you? What changes are being to each of us?
Yes, and then for me, it also went into all the layers of my own personal life and past lives and everything. So it's like, once you pull that thread, something gets triggered and you pull it and then you go, and everything is just layer by layer opens up to what that fear, how it affects you and how it controls you on so many different levels. So for me, this is a huge, deep inner work that I'm stepping in right now, because there's multi-layers of this fear that I have to release right now on so many levels. And I have to say that we talked about the gratitude. This is the thing, I get to the point where it's like I'm on that cusp of going into this gratitude for something in my life that happens that opens up that field for me to look into. When something like that happens, it might be negative, but when that happens and then you open and you say, oh shit, this is what I wasn't seeing. And then you work through that and then you release something through that, then that gratitude becomes so huge that it's like there's this field of gratitude then. And I know with this, I am gonna, what is happening with me right now, this is going to be big for me because this is very deep. And this layer of what I need to release right now is big, because fear of death is used to control us. And this is, I think, their last sort of tool. It's that fear, because what if we pass through that? There's no other fear. So this is seeing the layers it's bringing up in me. Ooh, this is big for me. For my soul, this is big and this is important. And so I am going to look at it from here. What do I do with this right now? What do I do? And I got to ask here. I got to ask my heart. I got to ask my center. What is this? What is this in my external reality? Like you were saying, Christine, that, and if you have that inner outer and I see what's on the outer for me right now. So I'm going to go on the in and say, okay, what is it that is reflecting here? And what is it that I need to do so there is a flow? Because that's what it is. We look at death as a stop of flow of life. And that's wrong. Because energy doesn't stop. It transforms. It goes into a different reality. So for me, that's inner work. That's inner work for me. And then for those people that don't see it that way, and like I said in the beginning, we can obviously then see that for some other people, it's just same old business as usual. Because that's how it's been and that's how they want to keep it. Because what I see a lot in alternative communities is that because energetically, I can go with the flow of energy. Let's say, whoever's here, and that's, I guess, how we psychically can predict, is because we see where energy is moving. So with a lot of people in alternative communities, I see a lot of their programming about to hit dead end. And so how that's going to manifest, I don't know. But because, like we were saying, some things are not going as planned by the system, and we've been seeing this. It's just people that are running those programs. They're those that are on low levels. Those are that we know, or they're visible to public. They know so little about what they actually doing. What is their goal? They don't know. So they don't know that they are about to be used and be done with. And this is what I think is happening to some people right now in alternative communities. We see some of these people right now that were sort of close to the top of that visible controlling structure in alternative community. The ones on the top, they're not really on the top, but for us, they seem to be on the top. They are recognizing that if they don't perform what they were told to perform, that they are going to be no use to that system. And so what they do, they scared and then try to find something else where they can be useful. And this is where some of these people running around and trying to attach themselves to a little bit of a different agenda now. You guys, this is the way I see it, that they're going to play it now, is still try to hide under something when they realize they're a little bit too visible, putting themselves under certain umbrella of agenda, then they'll try to jump agendas. Because they're still separating those agendas in alternative communities. Like they're still working, seems like they're working one against another. just like they do in politics. I mean, it's all the same structure. They do it in alternative media, you know, they're putting one against another, you know. But once they start realizing they're all used, they're going to try to jump agenda. They're going to try to look who's has something that might have future. So the next thing I see in alternative communities is all of those that were pro BRICS and pro Chinese dragon families and pro Putin's going to save us the world. All of those agendas are going to start cracking. Because it's almost like, I don't know how to explain this, but energetically, I see the connections and through, like I said, this energetic nod that is unraveling. And so for me, I can always, you know, follow certain signatures so I can see where the beginning of it started energetically. But if there was a beginning in this inorganic nod, that overlay, there's an end to it that I can also see and feel the end of it. And so a lot of those people there are starting to hit that end with that agenda. So how is that going to look? Because there's a lot of people that put a lot of their energy into it, into the new money system as well. And so all of that, as we see right now, we talked about it in the beginning, and Randy was so beautifully explaining all this money system, because we just mentioned in the very beginning that what is on the top of this, you know, this agenda that we just had a death in, it connects to black magic, to the money black magic system. So that's what's coming up for us, because that's what's on the top. And so, of course, it's going to start showing cracks. So we should be ready for it.
Yeah, I think left to their own devices, these systems will, you know, if they're allowed to run, they'll cannibalize themselves. Mm-hmm. But the best thing that could happen is what's happening, is they are being revealed for what they really are. And people think that's horrible. They're going, well, isn't that creating separation and polarity? No, it's not, because the revelation then allows for the individual soul, the individual entity, to adjust within a structure that's not cannibalistic and destructive. See, I'm a critic. I'm not a hater. You know, this was something David Wilcock routinely got wrong. He tagged people as being haters who were critical. I think that's wrong. I think we have to embrace people who critique us, criticize us. And I think we need to be in an accountability with other people, not in a control fashion, but the ability to be transparent, for somebody to come to me and say, you know, you said this, and some of that was good, but I think this is bullshit. And I have to be willing to entertain the fact that, yeah, there was some bullshit there. Let's talk about it. That's not what's happening now, because the corporate mentality does not allow that. The corporate mentality controls. They keep things pulled into the circle because their circle is tied to their monetary system. It's tied to their own incestuous demonic system, which ultimately always destroys itself. Evil will implode upon itself because it is a negative vortex. And I think, Lily, that's what you're talking about as well. You know,
yes,
reparations.
Yeah, it's got to hit that end for them. But the thing is, what we're talking about, it's held up, and it was programmed and attempted for us to create it. And some of those people were pushing on humanity or projecting the creation of that new money system that was going to be exactly the same as old, just, you know, same old system. what had happened is with the people that got caught in it, human beings with the human souls that got caught in it because they have the power to create. So they need to catch those people and spin their creative power so they can hook other human souls into that agenda of creating the system for somebody else, you know. Even those people, let's say, that might get upset about what we said today by calling those people out. There's a lot of people that are pro BRICS and pro new, you know, pro red dragon family, pro dragons completely, you know. It doesn't matter, but there's a lot of people in alternative community that are running the new system agenda very openly, even though even though they know it's not their system, because deep in their heart, every human being that caught in there, we always know that what we're doing, that there is something wrong with that. And this is the question that every human being that is in that agenda that I will ask you to do. Go sit under the tree and go ask yourself. There is a part of you that knows what you're doing is hurting humanity. There is part of you that you can't shut down as a human being that will tell you that you're hurting yourself and you're hurting humanity. So you can't say you were so mind programmed that you didn't know, because a human being always knows. Always knows. Just because we refuse to listen to our gut feeling, that doesn't mean that it didn't give us signs. And so this is also part of that, taking responsibility for all those people. Okay, if you think it's a good system, first and foremost, if you're not sure, if you have one question that maybe it's not the best for humanity, even if you have that much doubt, go here and ask, what is it that gives me that much doubt? Even if you believe that much that it's still good, even if you believe every word that Putin promised, you know, that he will do with that system, it doesn't matter. If you have that feeling that maybe something's not right here, because there is just too many lies. There's just too many lies. There's too many broken promises already. So for every one of those people, they will have to ask themselves that question. Why am I still hanging on to a system, and why am I powering some agenda that's already let me down in the past? Because every one of those people, they already had their promises broken. You know, with that system, with that new system, with that money, there was all kinds of promises from all the dragon families that they never lived up to. So what does it mean? They have no power to bring that on. And the only power they have is if we, humanity, believe it and create it for them. Because those clowns can't do it. They can do it. So it is up to us. So we should step into our human power. We should pick it up and we should use it. And if that means you got to go and sit with the tree for 2 years, if that's what it takes, then trust me, it's worth it. It's worth it for you to step into your human power. That's what I want to say to people today. It doesn't matter how much time it takes, but you do have that feeling inside that you are not operating from your own empowered self. You are propagating somebody else's agenda that you believed is good for you. You didn't know it was good for you because you didn't check with yourself. You just believed. And it's never going to get you to self-empowerment. Never. that system is not going to get us into self-empowerment. And so for people that are still propagating that, if you tell them that that's anti-human, because it banks on you having a belief system and not trust your human intuition. It banks on it because inside your human part is going to say, this is sane system. This is hierarchical system. So what are those people to do right now in alternative community? Because right now, they're all sort of, they can really bank on the death right now. There's other people that, there's not enough pieces. There's so many pieces, so many people that are trying to bank on this death right now, and not everyone can bank on it. So what are they going to bank on next? And the thing is, it's like, I don't know you guys, but I'm just here saying everything because I see all this so clearly that it's like, it's impossible not to see it anymore. And this is what I'm trying to sort of say to people. You cannot hide anymore. You cannot hide. When you work anti-human agenda, you're obvious to humanity. Because every human being has the intuition and the feeling. And so you can't have enough spin lies to keep the belief that you are standing with humanity when you're working anti-human agenda. We feel it. We feel it in our hearts. We feel it in our guts. We feel it in your words. We feel it in your eyes. I feel it all. I see through all this. I always been able to see it. And just because some of us human beings don't say what we see through, it doesn't mean we don't see it. But here we're in this time where it's time to tell you, we always seen it. And we see it today. And you were never hiding from us. Because humanity, we have our guts. We have our planet. We have our nature. And nature always wins. We all knew that. And if we step into our nature, which is a human being, then we will win. Because nature always wins. That's just my opinion. I just...
You don't have to...
So, in the past, we might not express that we've seen it, but we're all sitting here. We always knew. We always knew that human part was always there. It was always strong. It was always showing. And today there's so many more of us. And we're saying we see through everything. And it's just, there is no more hiding. There's no more hiding. So you can try, you're going to embarrass yourself. Not us. Not us. By spinning lies about us, you're going to only show yourself. Because I'm standing here in my humanity. And I'm telling you that I am, as a human being, I see that you're working anti-human agenda. And so I'm going to say it if you do. I'm not going to keep quiet anymore. Because enough is enough of this. And so all that spinning of lies will have to hit that end with humanity. It will. There is just this. If you want to think that I'm predicting this, I am predicting this. If you're going to think that it's prediction, that's fine. But that's just, it has to end. This awakening is happening, and the human consciousness is living field. And dead field cannot overtake a living field. It just cannot. It's simple math. That a third grader will know. So those people that are spinning the lies on top, telling you that they somehow have power, they have no brains whatsoever. I mean, they're special, right? They know a lot more than any other human being knows. That's what they're trying to make you believe, right? That they know more. Yeah, they're special in a different kind of way. Special, little special, DTD special. I mean, it's funny. That's how special they are, because they've got a little piece of death that they're spinning, thinking that they're spinning it into life. You just go deeper and deeper, and like Randy, you said, it's just until you self-destruct. She's completely going to that black hole of emptiness, because all of that it's not living. So sorry for being little.
No, you know what you just did though. You underscored the point when we started out with this. Your black rituals didn't work. Your sacrifice didn't work. Your attempt to now sell death and fear as a currency to continue your false economy isn't working either. We're redeeming the living aspect, which is the living being, the living soul. Do we have a perfect system right now to denominate this? No. The fact that we're having this conversation, and what you've really put across beautifully, Lily, just this concept that we're not slaves to these people anymore. Their system is broken down. It's not working. It's cannibalizing itself, and it's turning against them because we plugged into something. Everything they intended for evil has now turned itself around and jacked the entire consciousness field up another level. And as a result of that, we can energetically put this out, amplify it, and a few more people will hear this message and understand exactly what it is that's going on. Whether it's dragon families or the dinar or any of these other false economies, some other savior program that they want to run, none of it's going to work. What's going to work is thou art God, thou art creator, we are one, we can come together, and we can ultimately turn the darkness back on itself.
Yes, and we'll ride that bitch bareback.
Beautiful.
Christine, you're muted, but you're
and
so
I have so much to say.
So
I have to mute myself because otherwise I just talk all the time. But really, maybe this is a good place to sort of break our conversation for the moment and come back to it, because thou art God. What you say, what we're really, really getting to in the ability to observe energetically what's happening here and try to disclose it to others so that they can start to see it, because these have been hidden from humanity for so long, for eons of time, this very, very thing that we're talking about. And I was part of the dragon family. I went inside. I was part of the golden dragons and the red dragon, right? And I went into both of those with a skepticism. It wasn't like, because what I observed within that instructed me so much. And there's people in there aren't purposely propagating something as an evil agenda. They want to believe in something outside of themselves. And that there's going to be somebody with a big bank account that's going to bankroll this new humanity, and it's not going to happen. It is, I will say that, not just my opinion. I see that it can't happen. And I was fortunate enough to speak with the Red Ambassador, the one that calls himself of the Red Dragon family. He also knows that, right? And he's actually set himself in a position where if the consciousness is not there, there will be no money. It's bottom line. If it's coming from people and they want it out of fear-based, if they think that they can go and open up new bank accounts and make contracts again, it's not going to happen. That's not where it's coming from. So I would say that very openly. Now, and a lot of it's being sold, we're talking about selling, as a bridge. We need to be in this economic system until we can bridge over to the next. That's a false paradigm too.
I see it as a nuisance.
Well, it's
That
just
you're
not
going to be jerked by
right.
into the system, new system.
Exactly.
So
That's all it is.
yeah, that buying into it, they're putting that nuisance on their neck, so then somebody else can jerk it and tell them what to do and
You
how.
contract with a bank right now, or you contract through a lawyer, you contract through the unlawful legal system, you're going to contract yourself back into the system, period. And this is why what we are attempting to do is to push consciousness out, human imagination. We don't know yet what we're capable of, but let's find out.
Yeah, let's find out, because like Neil said a few shows back, that give us a chance to create this reality that is positive and beneficial to every living being on this planet. Because you know what, it is possibility. It is more than possibility. It is probability, because if it exists as a possibility that we can create a reality that is beneficial to all living beings, then we can. We can and we will.
Yeah, we are.
Because we're that close.
We are. We are. You know, it is an aspect, because when we get into the eternal now, it's already been created. All we're really doing is getting rid of the false beliefs, getting rid of the barriers, getting rid of all the things that keep us from our essence, from our core, and it is love. And I have to always come back to that and say that, and it's expressed with gratitude and with joy. That's the living field. The living field does not, and it's just, I don't know, I probably don't even want to say another word right now, because I'm feeling that within this group energy that's here right now. And we can give of ourself or the spirit through us, through our words and our actions. That always will come into what we're at, our actions, and impetus to others that hear us to grasp this and to experiment with it, to play with it, to dance with it. Even when it's really, really, really fucking hard, like last week was fucking hard, out of that, when you dance with it, when you dance with that energy, you start to transform it. And so I feel so grateful that we took the time today to speak with each other. Wow. uh,
Lily's muted.
Go ahead, Randy.
No, I was just saying Lily was speaking there, but she was muted. Say that again.
I said I wanted to thank you, all of you, for allowing me the space to express today. Because like you said, Christine, yes, it was very difficult last week. But it was also a very powerful process. So I thank you all for the support that you've given me, especially through the last week. And to humanity for hearing us. I want to thank right now for hearing us today for what we wanted to tell humanity, and not from that field of, who's right and who's wrong here. That is just something we need to let go. Who was right, who was wrong. We need to step into this human living field and figure out how we are creating our reality so we can own it, and every one of us can have a reality that we want. This is my reasoning for being here today. And I want to thank you for hearing me. And I want to thank you for supporting human consciousness. I love you guys. Because without humanity, we can't do this. It is ours. It is our reality, and so we have to step into it and take responsibility for it. That's where I am with all this. This is what I'm contemplating. This is what I'm thinking, is we have to step into our power. It's the only way.
Yeah. And step out of our fears, or still step through our fear. Ultimately, existentially, and I think this is something else we all know, there really is nothing to fear. We've all been through it. We've been through the ringer. We've been through it. We've been through all of it. And perhaps this is what draws each of us here together to speak together, is that it's not coming from a place of intellectualized book learning. It's coming from the inner gnosis and having gone through it. So sharing that with those that want to hear us. And I love what you said, Lily, is like, thank you, humanity. And I'm thanking each of us, but I'm also thanking the greater us. And I feel like this is the new horizon, the real reality. That's, you said we might get there. I really do see it. And I'm using and allowing the full power of my imagination to see it, to just see it, because it is emerging right now. I know each of us here at least knows that. Claudia, do you want to say anything, love?
No, you said it all.
That's what you always say.
Well, it's true.
Yeah.
But I have to say I miss parts of it because my internet is not behaving.
Uh-huh. Well, it's always nice.
So you all kept freezing.
Yeah, you've been dropping in and out of the call all day. So in our virtual world here, it's really nice to connect with everyone and big group hug. And I'm sure there's going to be other sharings. And I know we didn't really touch on a lot of things that each of us is aware of, and perhaps getting out of some of the personalities into the underlying gaming of humanity. There's an aspect here that I would really like to get into, which is the creation of the virtual reality game and how that's being rolled out. But right now, I just want to feel the heart feeling. Max Spiers was a being of the heart energy. This is undeniable. And this is where I connect with him as being part of my soul also. And so we spoke about him quite a bit today, and I would like to just honor that.
We're with you, Christine.
Mm-hmm.
Honor.
Thank you all, the brave spiritual warriors out there, because we're all needed. And there are ones out there that are called to really do some serious stuff out there in the deeper astrals right now. It's a hard job. It really is. It is. And, it's not just us talking here on a screen today. There's some real work being done and some real soul energies being called into this. And we keep funneling into this moment, this crucial, maybe it's always been this moment. Maybe that moment is always eternally here with us. I think as a group, we're feeling it more acutely now. So thank you. And Niels, I just want to go walk in the forest with you. I want to go see the Sasquatch. When you're talking about Sasquatch or other friends talking about it, see, this is the other thing. This is the magical kingdom, not fucking Disney World. This is the magical kingdom itself. So embrace it. I mean, heck, looking at one star in the sky at night and, unplug from this virtual reality game that they've planned for us all. So anyway, love you all.
Love you too all. Thank you for today.
Come walk with me. You're all welcome.
You go mushroom picking as well?
A little bit. I do some mushroom picking, yes.
Wonderful. I